Hey now, today we're going to take a look at Mountains of Madness, the first big box expansion for Eldritch Horror from Fantasy Flight Games. Now there was a smaller expansion for Eldritch Horror called Forsaken Lore, which didn't really add anything groundbreaking to the game. It just added a new Ancient Elder to fight, gig, and then added cards to all the existing decks, which was great, and the game did need that, but it didn't break any new grounds. Mountains of Madness is way different in the sense that, well, as you can see by the size of the box, there's a lot of stuff in this one. It adds a whole new board, the Antarctica board, for the investigators to go on adventures on. And speaking of that, there's a new adventure deck where you can actually go on little side quests to help you advance the mystery of the great old one that you happen to be fighting. There's new investigators. There's two new ancient old ones. The Ithaqua, I believe it's called. There's a giant Sasquatch god who's kind of the easier god in this set, and then the ancient elder things, which is the really difficult ancient one in this set. There's new artifacts, new items for the assets deck, the new prelude cards that change the setup of the game a little bit. There's a ton of stuff in this, so I can't go over every single little thing, but I am going to give you just an overview of the new stuff that comes in this set. And by the way, just so you know, I'm sure it's obvious if I'm reviewing the expansion, I love Eldritch Horror. As a little spoiler here, it is extremely high on my top 100 games of all time list, so they didn't need to impress me too much with this set. But nevertheless, for those who are questioning it, let's go ahead and take a look at what comes in the box. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Alright, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what comes in the Mountains of Madness expansion for Eldritch Horror. I'm not going to go over every single little thing. I just want to give you a taste of what's in the box. And everything that you see here is pretty much what comes in the box. Of course, the main centerpiece is this Antarctica board. So at the bottom of the normal world map for Eldritch Horror, of course, you have Antarctica. And you'll actually connect this. Well, you can put it anywhere you want, but you probably connect it right at where the bottom of the board is. Just put the main board right there. And traveling there, it's kind of difficult, but not too bad. You can travel directly from the space, the Antarctica space, onto the Miskatonic outpost. It's it's actually kind of the way I read it is it's a free action that doesn't even count as a move. Essentially, when you're in the Antarctica space on the main board, you are here at the Miskatonic outpost if you want to be. But then you just do normal movements to get along down here in the different locations. You can also spend 2 successes on an influence roll, or what I call the asset roll, in order to fly to the Miskatonic outpost from anywhere else on the main world map. Now, the unique thing, amongst other things, about this the new Antarctica board is that every location has its own special ability that you can activate. So I'll see that if I could focus this just a bit. But so, for instance, the Miskatonic outpost says that as a local action, you can use this. You can either gain a ship ticket, or you can test your influence. If you pass, you get to gain the Antarctic Guide unique asset, and I'll get to what those are in a second. The Lake Camp lets you test your influence in order to get a dog sled unique asset, and you can also use that space as essentially a city space in order to gain other assets. Just skipping around here, a lot of these are very powerful. So the City of the Elder Things let you test your perception, and if you pass, you get to get a clue or spend a clue to gain an artifact, which is kind of amazing. The Snowy Mountains also lets you test your willpower and spend a focus, and if you do that, you get to gain a skill of your choice. I'll get back to what focus is in a second as well. That's something new in this game. And finally, the Plateau of Leng lets you test your lore or spend a clue, and if you pass, you get to move to any space containing a gate. And this is all very, very cool in my opinion. Now, a couple of things that were just mentioned there that are new aspects of the game. Let me just get this back into focus. So we have focus tokens. This is actually a brand new action that investigators can take on their turn. You can spend an action to gain one of these focus tokens. And what that does is that at any point you can, on your turn, you can spend a focus token, which sounds funny to say, to re-roll a die that you just rolled. And a lot of the investigators, the new investigators that come in this set, which I'll get back to in a second, I'm going to be saying that a lot, lets you spend focus tokens for special abilities. The other thing I mentioned were unique assets, and this game comes with a whole stack of these unique asset cards, and just as the name implies, they're like special allies and items and even task cards that you get that you can only have one of, and they're just very, very powerful. So for instance, let's just take a look here. You have ones like Kid O'Brien here, he's an ally. Once per round, you may add 1 success to your test results. When resolving a strength test during a combat encounter, you reduce the damage of monsters you encounter by 1 to a minimum of 1. That is super powerful. Now, some of these are tests. So, for instance, the Courier run, you put a clue onto this card signifying one of the spots on the board. If you get to that spot, you get to have an encounter. And if you can resolve that encounter, you get to flip this over to its other side, and you get to advance the active mystery by 1. That means you're 1 step closer to essentially winning the game. And there's a lot of different things, like the unique dog sled I mentioned earlier lets you travel freely, very, very quickly around the Antarctic board. Our Antarctic Guide unique assets you can get from the Miskatonic Outpost actually gives you a bonus whenever you're attempting rolls on the Antarctic board, things like that. So that's one cool aspect of the game. Now, a negative aspect would be the new conditions like hypothermia. Whenever you rest, you cannot heal any of your damage. Instead, you have to roll a 4, 5, or 6 and hopefully discard this card. And of course, if you would ever gain another hypothermia condition, you flip the card over and things can get very, very bad. Let's see, what else? You have adventure cards. That's what this token is for, and that is what this entire deck of cards are for. Some special cards will make you start an adventure, and these are just like little side quests that you can proceed through, and they're broken down into 3 sections, 1, 2, and 3, depending on what card it is. And then as you complete them, you get to advance the active mystery by 1. So it's another way for you to try and win the game. It's a new different path that you can take. Oh man, so much stuff. I'm not going to go over any of the kind of generic stuff. Like there's new cards added to the gate cards and all the different encounter cards for the different locations. These are actually encounter cards for the new Antarctic board. This one corresponds to these 3 yellow sets, and this blue deck corresponds to these. I don't really want to spoil those, and there's so many different ones to go over. And they function just the way they did in the normal game. Here's another new thing, though, the Prelude cards. You can randomly draw a Prelude card at the beginning of the game or do one by choice, and they will affect the setup of the game. So, for instance, the Ultimate Sacrifice, you actually will begin the game. Let's see if I can focus that a little bit at least. You actually will begin the game with 2 investigators drawn at random, dead or insane, on the board. And you get to go there right away and have an encounter with their body and gain an artifact. But you have to advance the Doom track by a couple spots for doing so. The Doomsayer from Antarctica actually has to do with the Antarctic board. Even if you're not playing with any other card or Elder God that would make you use the Antarctica board, this one will make you put it into play. So you can either do that by random or by choice. It's up to you. You have new asset cards, new mythos cards, new artifact cards, and of course there's new investigators, and a lot of these are actually very, very cool. Some of them, like I said, have special abilities having to do with the new focus tokens. Some of them just have very general and powerful abilities. So Tommy Muldoon here actually has to do with monsters. He can use an action to move a monster of his choice with toughness of 3 or less from an adjacent space into his space, or during an encounter phase after other investigators on your space may choose an encounter as if there was no monsters there. So he is all about fighting monsters on his own. Patrice here can use clues and focuses together in order to gain skills on her own. Whenever she closes a gate during an otherworld encounter, she gets a clue and a focus. So she's very clue and focus centric. Finn Edwards here, it's very difficult to take items from him. He never has to lose an item or any other kind of asset unless he wants to, if some effect would force him to. And just last one I'll show you. George here is really cool because he can test influence and remove anyone else's debt condition or detained condition, which is just kind of insane, actually. And you have 4 other investigators in the game as well. So you have a lot of different choices here, and here's all of their little cool standees. Still be cool if you can get some miniatures, but whatever. Weirdly enough, this game actually comes with reference cards. It feels like those probably should have been in the base game, and they just kind of forgot them. But yes, now you have reference cards to look up some of the basic actions and rules. Maybe they did that because they added the new focus action as well. And of course, last but certainly not least, sort of the centerpiece of the game, you have 2 great old ones, or ancient evil gods, whatever you want to call them, that are introduced in this game. You have Athaqua, who is called the Windwalker as well, who starts at Doom 13, and he is all about giving you the hypothermia condition, and also about having the Antarctica board in play. And he only takes 3 mysteries to complete, so I'd say he's probably on the easier scale of the great old ones, but still, it doesn't mean he's not very, very nasty to fight against. And then you have the Rise of the Elder Things, which has the highest doom count. But the reason for that is that you have to solve 4 mysteries, which I think is well, maybe that's not too unusually high, but there's a lot of work that you need to do to go into some of those mysteries. So they are a bit of a longer game, and they're much, much more difficult than Athaqua, in my opinion. I have only won against them once over a couple of games, and it was by the skin of my teeth. And they're one of the, as evidence of that, of their difficulty, they're one of the great old ones that has an extra a deck of mystery cards that you have to deal with in addition to their normal research cards and the basic mystery cards you need to win the game. So that's just a very quick overview of what comes in this game. There's lots of other stuff. There's new spells, new epic monsters. There's new gates for all the different stuff that's out here. There are Antarctic research cards that you draw only when you're on the Antarctica board when you're trying to get a clue instead of any other kind of research card. Oh man, lots and lots of stuff in this game. I can't cover it all, but let's go ahead and get to my final thoughts. Okay, there's a lot to go over for this, and obviously I'm not going to go over every single new thing that comes in this set, but just to sum up, this is fantastic. I think that if you really love Eldritch Horror as much as I do at least, then this is just going to be a must-buy for you, even though the cost is a bit prohibitive. When I first saw the cost of the set, I was like, wow, that's as much as like a normal full-fledged standalone board game. But when you actually dig into it and see how much content is there, it's worth it. It's worth it if you love the game. If you're kind of like still on the fence about the game, like you own it and they're thinking, well, I'll double down and hope that this increases my enjoyment, I don't think you should do that. Because as much as I love the Mountains of Madness set and I love how much it brings to Eldritch Horror, like so many other types of expansions, there's nothing that's going to change your mind here. In fact, this actually exacerbates a couple of the problems that people commonly complain about the game, and even I've had some issue with. For instance, the length of the game. I think at this point, if you're playing with Mountains of Madness, you can officially say that this is getting into Arkham Horror territory as far as the length of the game. I don't think you could say that with just the base game, but once you add the board, the Antarctica board, and once you start doing things like the Prelude cards and the Adventure cards, forget it. You are in full-on Arkham Horror territory, 5-hour game. Especially with more and more people that you play with. And by the way, because I haven't talked about Eldritch Horror on the channel much lately, I am at the point where I am not playing with more than 4 players. It's done. It's over with. Not happening. Okay? It is too much time. But okay, that's a little side rant. As far as the stuff in Mountains of Madness, it's all good. A lot of it is just like general stuff that you add to like the encounter decks, the asset deck, the artifact deck to just flesh things out. That is easily thrown in, and I'm not going to say it drastically changes the game, but more variety is a fantastic thing for this game. And so actually I'd say that this game, this expansion is mostly modular. So stuff like that can easily be thrown in, and you've got new investigators that all work on their own just fine. So if you just wanted new investigators, which was the big complaint people had about Forsaken Lore, the smaller expansion, it didn't add any new investigators. Well, now you have a bunch. I think there's 8. So that's a fantastic amount of variety to the investigators, and a lot of them are really, really cool. There's really different abilities, different feeling abilities than the original investigators. Like the guy who can actually get rid of people's debt. That's like amazing. I mean, you're still sacrificing a very valuable action to do it, but still, to easily get rid of someone else's debt is just great, especially since he has good influence, because people who take a debt who have crappy influence, they're just stuck for most times. And most people don't even worry about it, and then of course that debt comes due and they're just crippled. This guy can take care of that for you. There's another guy who's all about monsters, like moving monsters around, drawing them away from other investigators, and just taking them on himself. That's a really cool ability. I like it when the characters are focused. And that way it kind of encourages you to take characters who give you a nice balance in the party, if you want to consider this like a role-playing game. Now, there's a new investigator action, the focus thing. It's not like a huge deal, but I like it. I like having more options. I always felt like it was kind of a minimal amount of actions that the players could do. I always wanted there to be a little bit more, make you feel like you had a little more control over what you can do in the game. And that's another major complaint that people had about the game, was it's totally random. I mean, there's no bones about it. The game is completely random. You can just die on dice rolls. But at least with the ability to have the focus tokens, you can have some mitigation of that. And some characters actually have special abilities that have to do with the focus tokens, and that's really cool. Especially since before that, really the only reliable way you had to reroll dice was using your clue tokens, which are just as precious as they ever were. So it's nice to have a backup plan for that. You don't have to, or really a plan A instead of your plan B being using your clue tokens, which you hardly ever want to do willingly. So that's very cool. Other little things, the prelude cards, I like that those switch up the setup a bit. They're not entirely necessary, but some of them are pretty cool thematically. Like my favorite one is, I hate talking about this stuff because I feel like this game shouldn't have spoilers in some senses, but there's a really cool one where prior to this adventure of you guys sitting down at the table, other investigators bravely gave their lives in service of defeating the Great Old Ones, and so you can actually right off the bat go and have encounters at their bodies, their insane body and their dead body, and get some stuff right off the bat. But for all of these prelude cards, or maybe most of them, there's a trade-off. You always have to do something like Advanced Doom, or the Omen Tracker. I always get this confused, Doom or Omen Track. Basically, the countdown to defeat, you have to advance it in order to gain access to these cool abilities. So there's always a trade-off, but I like that you have that option. You have those the choices of having more variety in the game. I'll keep going back to variety, which is key for this game. The adventure cards are neat. They're just like little side quests. They're things you can do to sort of advance the mystery further, which if you're kind of stuck in a rut, I've seen that as kind of a problem in this game before too, where you're working on a mystery and you just can't get it done. Sometimes it can get really frustrating, just trying to like say, get clue tokens, then you have to get clue tokens, then you go over here and now you have to, a lot of the adventures require clue tokens as well, but now at least you have different options and different things you can do. So I like those. They're not going to come out all the time. A lot of them are tied intimately to other cards in the game telling you to bring out adventures, or specific preludes telling you to put out an adventure, and so on. So man, there's so much stuff to talk about here. The Great Old Ones, Ithaqua we found was fairly, I don't want to say easy. Well, let me put it this way. The easy gods in this game to fight are like the super uber difficult ones to fight in any other cooperative game, but Ithaqua is on the easier scale, I'll say that. Whereas the ancient elder things, the ancient evil things, that was really difficult, and we lost. I mean, I played it twice, and we lost one of them easily, and barely hung on by the skin of our teeth in the other one. It gives you plenty of time on the Doom track, but there's more to do. You have to solve more mysteries than you normally would. It's either 4 or I think it's 5, which is crazy. So, and that just is like an artificial time lengthener. So I don't know how much I'm going to play with that one anymore. But hey, again, more variety for the gods is a good thing. Oh man, there's a ton of stuff in this game, and it's all really, really cool. But again, it's not really going to change anyone's mind about the game. I just think that if you're committed to Eldritch Horror, this is going to be a must-buy. It really is. I think that it's such a fantastic game, and there's so many cool options. Oh man, I didn't even talk about the Antarctica board. The Antarctica board! Again, something that's not going to be in every game, but I like that you now have locations which have unique special abilities. I know that would probably be impractical and lengthen the game even more if every ability on the main board had that as well, but that is so cool. And maybe one day they will actually change that and add like little special powers each location can have, like Rome or something. Instead of just like, oh, this location has more potential to give you a strength bonus if you have an encounter here. Those special abilities on the Antarctica board, so cool. I like them a lot. So, getting back to what I was saying, just to wrap up because I don't want this to go on forever. This is a solid, fun set if you love Eldritch Horror. If you don't, or if you're on the fence about it, probably not going to help your enjoyment of the game. But for those of us who are already deep into it, fantastic. And I hope that if you love Eldritch Horror, you go up and pick it up right away, because you will be pleasantly surprised. And I think I'm okay, and I don't need any more expansions. But having played this game again for the first time in a while and having so much fun with it, maybe I'm okay with there being yet another expansion, because more and more and more stuff for this game can't be that bad of a thing. That is the Mountains of Madness expansion for Eldritch Horror. Love it.